Hello and welcome to Building with Infowise Ultimate Forms. My name is Will Cooper. I am a SharePoint developer. I have a background in Microsoft web development, and I also am the training coordinator for Infowise Solutions. What I'd like to present today is the Infowise Ultimate Forms toolset, and I want to show you how you can build your own custom SharePoint solutions working entirely from the SharePoint interface using the Infowise Ultimate Forms tools. Using this tool set, you'll be able to build complex solutions without having to use external tools like Visual Studio or SharePoint Designer. These tools are accessible both to developers and SharePoint Power users alike. With that, we're going to go ahead and jump right into the SharePoint interface, and I'm going to show you how these tools are used to build these solutions. Ultimate Forms are set up in a very intuitive way. Once this is installed in your SharePoint environment, you'll be able to easily find the configurations and settings for everything that you need to do. This works both for on-premise SharePoint or if you have this installed in your Office 365 environment. The settings look slightly different, but all of the same tools and options are available in both environments. The tools work through the configuration directly in the SharePoint interface. In SharePoint, everything is based on the context of lists and libraries. By the same token, with Infowise, you're going to do your configuration as it relates to lists that you set up in SharePoint. The main hub for working with the Infowise Ultimate Forms tools is the Infowise Design View. Once you have Infowise installed in your environment, you can click on these puzzle pieces. It'll take you right into the Design View. In this view, you'll see nodes which you can expand and collapse, which show you each of the various sections of tools that are available to use with the Infowise Ultimate Forms. On the right-hand side are some friendly reminders and links to helpful tools that will show you just exactly how to take advantage of each of these options. In general, when working with the Infowise Ultimate Forms toolset, there's a standard process that you'll follow, especially at the beginning of developing your tools. That process is defined in this orange box on the right-hand side. So the first thing that we're going to want to do when we're working with a tool that we want to set up is create all of our columns and define the validation for those columns. So that's the first step. After that, we'll be able to start taking advantage of the unique options that are available in Infowise. Additionally, below that orange box, you see links to various training articles and specific information that pertain to the options that you have in Infowise. These are always going to be available to you, and you can return to this hub screen repeatedly to access your options and change your settings as necessary. Before we jump into some of the specific settings and configuration that we can do in Infowise, I want you to get a look at what these solutions look like once they're developed. Infowise solutions really stand out from other SharePoint solutions that I've seen in the past. They just look great. And this is something you're going to be able to do yourself. Even if you're a nuts and bolts person and you don't consider yourself a designer, you're still going to be able to easily set up your tools so that there's visual indicators and flags and various icons so that your users can easily differentiate between projects that are on track or ones that have fallen behind and this type of information. In most SharePoint intranet sites that I've looked at, most of the pages look very much the same. It's difficult to know which information is critical. When a project is late or someone hasn't completed one of those steps, you want to be able to know that immediately without having to read text or wade through a wall of information. The indicator icons really help you to solve these problems. So on this dashboard, we see a project management tool. Normally in SharePoint, I would just be looking at numbers, dates, text, just information like that, and be nothing but a black and white screen. You can tell immediately in looking at this screen, especially with the status field that we've created and some of these KPI flags to let us know when something's on time or past the deadline, or even the progress bar, all of these visual indicators immediately convey meaning to us and help us to identify which records need attention or which other ones are on track. I'll show you a few of my favorite fields by going into the list settings area. In here you can see some of the Infowise fields that are available to you. There's several fields to choose from. I'm going to take you into a few of them that help you to create that visual interface. In my case, I've got a field which I named On Time, and it's an Infowise field. This is going to check a value in another column that I've set up called Date Difference. And you can tell that the configuration is simple. I simply create threshold values which tell the system when to change that icon. So in this case, if we're less than a -7 value, we're going to have a green flag. That means that we're on time. If there are between 0 and 7 days before a deadline, it's going to show yellow or a caution type of flag. And then past the deadline, we're going to get this red flag. You can choose any type of icons you want. In fact, there are 250 icons baked right into the interface so that you have a wide selection to choose from. Or alternatively, you can even load your own icon set. So there's lots of options to choose from there. For choice fields, instead of having a simple drop-down list, you can set up your own list with icons. One type of field that I use all the time is a status indicator. And really this can be appropriate in just about any type of situation. Just about any type of project, there are phases that that project goes through as it goes from its very beginning through the middle stages during execution of work, and then finally at the end when it reaches its final complete status. So you can pick helpful icons to show to your users to help differentiate between those projects as they go through various stages. And really this is just a matter of picking your drop-down choices, and then using the icons you can just go to the indicators and pick whatever you need. So those indicators can serve both as KPI flags, key performance indicator flags, or you can use this to help a drop-down convey a lot more information. And you saw that on our dashboard we can actually use multiple fields that use that color choice to help us make everything stand out in the way that we need. Another type of indicator is a progress bar. You saw that we have those progress bars to help us show the progress. This could refer to a timeline or budget or really anything that you want. This would correspond well to anything that might be measured by a percentage. And you simply map that to fields that contain the value, and this could be 0 to 100, or in this case we're tracking spend percentage, so our maximum value would be the budget. So another great way to get a visual indicator corresponding to the values tracked in the tool. One last type of field I'll just highlight to you, which I also like, is the Infowise signature field. So in these projects, a lot of times we'd like for a manager or someone to sign off on something to indicate their approval. You can see I have the Infowise signature field, and these options show to us directly in the SharePoint list settings screen. These are additional fields that are available that show directly adjacent to the SharePoint fields already in the system. With an Infowise signature field, you're going to select a column to tie it to where the signature is going to apply to that column. that column value changes, it would invalidate the signature. There's multiple signature options. You can even have a handwritten signature. If you'd like just a simple checkbox, you can use the Windows Integrated Authentication. So we've got configuration options, and we can make that work in different ways. So what Infowise brings to the table is a lot of versatility to allow you to expand and have more options and functionality beyond the standard SharePoint fields provided out of the box. Once you've got your fields set up in the list and you have the validation set the way that you want, the next thing to do would be to break up those fields into sections. And that's where you'll be able to use the Infowise tabbed interface settings. In SharePoint, users are often overwhelmed with too much information. Really, we just see too many things on one screen. This is discouraging. Users don't want to feel overwhelmed by having to read through a lot of information and make a whole bunch of decisions at one time. Breaking up these fields and information into multiple sections is going to make things just a lot easier and more inviting for your users to look at. So let's take a look at how we can break things up using this tab setting. You'll notice that in my example I've got 4 tab sections. With Infowise you can have as many tab sections as you want. The key thing that you'll notice is that I'm only displaying a little bit of information and asking the user just to complete a few fields. This is simple to look at, it's not overwhelming, and it's clear exactly what I should do for my next step. You can see those indicator fields that we talked about are baked right into the interface. And here's the signature field, which can be expanded or collapsed by clicking on the double arrow node. I can tell in the definition section this probably contains the main information about the project. And then with the drop-down, you can see the category has different icons that are set to that as well. So this is visually appealing for the user. It's more friendly than just those straight text values. One thing that we can do with Infowise is create relational lists. This lets us create a simple type of database setup. In our case, we have an associated list called products. And what I can do is create a many-to-one relationship. So for this project, I can add multiple products. It's baked right into the form. I see this information show up in line. It just gives me a pop-up window, and I can include some more information. So just by completing that simple form, I can have multiple items associated with that list. I don't have to click off and go to another window or anything like that. I can add whatever I need. Simple to use. The history section is something we can set up using actions, and we're going to get into that a little bit later. But another great visual indicator that shows us something we want to know. Everyone always wants to know, well, what is the last thing that happened and what comes next? And this history log is going to help those users be able to quickly identify that and know what's going on with this project. Our manager notes section we can permission just so that the managers will be able to edit and look at this information. And we can do this through security settings with the fields. That's another thing that we'll get to later. One thing you might notice is we've got this green bar showing up over the tabs. This is something we can do in the tab configuration area, and this is a great way to help your users know whether they're in the edit form or in the display form. This is a common mistake that users make in the regular SharePoint interface. It's not immediately evident whether you are in the edit or view form. Consequently, it's common to hear a complaint that you are unable to edit fields. And so you have to tell the user to click on the edit button. Wouldn't it be great if you could just show your users in the interface an obvious indication that they're in the edit or display form? And here you go. You can see a green title bar, and this shows an obvious indicator that we are in the edit form. Another thing that we've got is some custom information that's dynamically generated. This is pulling right off the project title field, and it tells us quickly this is the Apples project and its status is in progress. At this point, I'm going to take you into the tab settings area. I want to show you just exactly how easy it is to set up that configuration. With all the Infowise Ultimate Forms tools, you can access those either from the Infowise design screen, which I showed earlier, or you can access from the list setting screens, and you'll see many options that relate to the Infowise tools. The Infowise tabs and tab permissions are where you can make assignments for each of those fields. Adding tabs is simple. You can just type in the name of the tab that you want, and then you just click on the Add button. In our case, we just need 4 simple tabs. You can resequence these using the arrows that show up on the right and modify these however you want. You can even assign permissions per tab, as we were describing in the case of Manager Notes. To configure the fields for each tab, you just click on the tab that you've created and then open this tab column association section. And then you just use this pick list to move fields over onto the right side, and you can see the number indicator showing the sequence that those fields are going to show. So really we just have to drop our fields into the various tabs. It's very easy to make adjustments, so we can reorder these fields or move them to different tabs anytime that we need very easily. You can see, for example, on the history section, we just have one field to show, which is that history log that we were just looking at. There's many other configuration options that exist in the tab settings area. Permissions allow us to assign a security group so that you can control whether users are able to see the information, whether they're able to actually write into that field, or whether it needs to be entirely hidden from them. And you can control how this applies in various forms, such as the new, edit, or view forms. We have some other options in the interface. We can choose from different themes. You can experiment with this, but there's 6 options that you can choose from. So if you want to get a little bit of a different look and feel, you have some options just based on the themes. If you don't want to put in your own custom CSS or something like that. And then we have options to control where the labels or the descriptions appear in the interface. So we have multiple ways to dress this up. You can see this is where the title configuration is set. The styling that I did for the edit form, the view form, I was able to do by just putting in a couple entries that help to define what that looks like. So you can see that this will help me in the title bar set that green background and allow some padding and font size to be set. So all of this is done through configuration. I didn't have to open up any kind of code window or anything separate like that. Once I've updated the settings, I can just save out of my form and it will immediately update the interface. So this is really the next critical step after you've created your fields, is to put together that tabbed interface. And if we change our mind later, it's very easy to make adjustments to this, even after a system is live and running and has multiple records that users have entered. Okay, hopefully you've held on to this point. This is my favorite part. In Infowise, the ability to model workflow and create a variety of actions allows you to create the machinery that can drive your custom solutions. So here we go. We're going to get to the actions. Actions in Infowise are something you can set up and create instead of doing workflow in SharePoint Designer. This is much faster. There are less steps. It's more accessible, and it's done through configuration. These are easy to set up, but the power of this configuration and settings allows you to build even the most complicated solutions. This is something that's going to be accessible both to SharePoint Power users and also to developers who may elect to trigger more sophisticated events and run things such as PowerShell scripts or things of that nature. So there's a lot of power built into the actions for advanced users. Our actions are going to react to specific conditions of things happening with our records in our solution that we build. So to get to the actions, you can do that through the design section. So I can go through the Infowise design screen, and this is under the business logic. The actions are always triggered in context to the list, and this is where you're going to set your conditions. You can see that in our projects tool, I've created a whole series of actions, and this is unlimited. So for a more sophisticated solution that you're building, you can continue to chain more and more actions together to accommodate any kind of situation that may come up in terms of the requirements that you're getting for your tool. And the sequence of those actions is important. These are going to be checked sequentially so that you can handle conditions in the various scenarios. So a very common one that we see a lot is the update action. So I'm going to take you into the settings and show you how these are created purely through configuration. There's 4 tabs. You've got a general settings, advanced settings, actions, and conditions. So in each action that you're going to set up, you're going to go through these 4 tabs, and this is how you're going to create a rule of when this is going to be triggered and what's going to happen when you do that. So in the general settings section, you will select what type of action you're going to do first. And there are many options available to choose from. I'll just show you in an add, you're going to have the option. This was an update action that I was in. When I go to add, I've got many choices. So update's the most commonly used, but you can do lots of interesting things here. I can trigger a list item to be created. That could be for this list or a list in another area. We can trigger a delete. If I want to do a copy, maybe I'm using an item or document as a template. That might be a time when I want to trigger this action. Emails can also be triggered in this if you want to do that in a more simple scenario. If you have an existing workflow that you want to use with the Infowise functionality, you can trigger those workflows directly from the Infowise actions. And then even on a broader scale, I can do things like creating a list or even an entire site triggered simply from an action I'm setting up on this list. So you can start to get a picture of how you might chain together these actions to create a very sophisticated functionality. I can manage permissions, something in SharePoint that may seem cumbersome and too much to manage normally would be actually doing item level permissions. Usually this is going to create too much management overhead if this is done manually, but this shows an example where based on a particular role, say a category or department or something like that, I can item by item permission those so that they're only accessible to specific users. So that's a very interesting possibility. We can call stored procedures in our SQL Server database, web services, and then I can even run PowerShell scripts directly from these actions. So for a regular Power user, normally you're not needing to take this type of action, but this starts to create a picture where you can see that there's a great deal of depth in terms of the functionality that you can invoke depending on the extent of the requirements that you're trying to accommodate. So just to go back to my update action, I'll tell you a little bit about how these tab section works when you're creating these. They all follow the same pattern, and as you get used to this, you'll find that these are intuitive and very easy to set up. So in the first tab, we need to indicate when this is triggered. So we've got our new, edit, form, or on a delete event we can trigger. Another possibility is running on a timer. So we can run reoccurring events if we need to have this happen more than one time. A nag email alert could be an example of where you might like to use a timer. So all of these can trigger in which situations this would fire. Advanced settings typically always follow the same pattern. Very commonly, this is an action that executes without the user interaction, so you can just check this box to hide. And then we can log our actions and even get a message if for some reason our action has failed. There's some other configuration here, but typically you don't really need to do that. This is very much the same in just about most of the actions that you would set up. All right, so the third tab, Action Settings. This is where we indicate what we want to occur. So this is an update, and we're just simply stating that for these columns we want to set a value. So I have a workflow message, and I've got some text that I want to set here, and then I want to make an entry in my history field. So we're just indicating that these fields, we want to write this information in these fields based on a particular condition. And what we indicate is that we want it to happen for the current item. And then we can set additional conditions on the fourth tab if we need to. So that's an example of an update action. We can do all types of actions. You can see the email triggered. That's an example of one that we have set up, and you can see that I even create lists and things like that. And then in this example, you can see where we're managing permissions. So I can do a whole sequence of events that I would normally have to do manually. In this case, you can see that I have the option to break inheritance. For those who use SharePoint a lot, you would recall that you have to go through various settings. Before you can do custom permissions on a particular item, you have to break inheritance before you can do that. So all the things that I might do manually, we can fully automate a process to save time for your users. So with these actions, you can create very complex scenarios, but at the same time, it's very accessible. You can see this is all done through configuration. I have many options to choose from. And really, most of the things that you might have typically done with workflow, you can now model that entirely with the Infowise Actions environment. So this is really the machinery and the heart of the logic that you're going to build into your solutions. And it works great. Okay, so what's left to cover? Really, at this point, you may be feeling a little bit overwhelmed. There's a lot of things that I've shown with this product. I know when I'm seeing something for the first time like this, it's a lot to take in. And so you might be excited about things about this product, but of course the question is, how do you get started? Where do I begin? It can feel a little bit overwhelming. When I first started using this product, I just knew a little bit about it, and gradually over time I continue to learn more and more. And so this is a process that keeps going and going. The first thing that's important with this product is taking advantage of everything that's available to you for training, and we've got a lot of resources there. And then the next thing that you want to do is practice. You want to get some hands-on experience and try out some of these things that you learn about through training. At that point, you're ready to jump in and go ahead and build some of your own custom solutions, and this will be an ongoing process. And you may start with one solution, and then as a result of that, you'll build something else, and you can just keep going and going. And this has been my experience as a developer. Over time, I've been able to find more and more opportunities to use this tool set in a SharePoint environment. And then the other thing is to experiment. There's so many different options in terms of the configuration and settings, and really the key to learning the product is through this experimentation. And many times you can find things that you didn't know about just by trying different configuration settings, trying actions that you haven't tried before, trying different print settings or things in the chart. And this is how you can discover new things about the product and find ways to accomplish things that you weren't aware of before. In terms of getting access to those resources, that's pretty straightforward. If you go right to the Infowise site, we've got lots of great sections. We've got a whole group of people posting in our blog section about different ways you can use the Infowise tools to create solutions. You can download templates, and then in our training section, you have areas that describe how to actually go through and apply these settings. And it's done in a visual manner. As I mentioned, nobody likes the wall of text. So in these sections, you're going to find screenshots and short videos, not long videos like the one I'm speaking on right now. Just quick 5-minute videos that would just show you how to learn the specific section that you're working on there. So each of these modules are something that can help you incrementally build up your skills. And then the other thing that's available in training, we can do hands-on training with you. You can get your team together and make everybody accountable and sit down and practice. And we can provide a lab-style training environment, and it'll give you step-by-step where you're going to work through it and you're going to earn that knowledge yourself. So there are great resources to give you that leg up and hit the ground running when you're using this tool set. So this is a great product. I hope that you have been able to see some of my excitement for the product, and I hope you seriously consider incorporating this as part of your overall SharePoint platform. It really is a great set of tools, and I hope that some of you are soon getting your first opportunity to use them. Thank you very much for your time today, and if you have any questions, please don't hesitate to reach out to us. I love to talk to customers and learn about whatever kind of solutions you're building. Thank you very much.